We are so excited to have you at this event. This is the kickoff of our Just Transition in Transportation Advocacy. My name is Paulo Nunes Bueno. I am a Japanese Brazilian man in my 50s. I go by he, him. I have blue glasses on and crazy curly hair. And I want to kick off by sharing with you what is the landing page for the advocacy work that we're doing, and to encourage you to bookmark this page, because it's going to have a lot of opportunities to get involved, and it really speaks about the work that we're doing for this entire next phase of this work that we're doing. So hang on just a sec. I'm going to share my screen just so that you see it. So it's our Just Transition in Transportation. It's got our coming events there. I think somebody just posted a link to that page. And the key thing that we want you to know is that in Washington State, 45% of our climate change emissions come from roads, and we have one of the highest rates of asthma in the country. And we've been making decisions about transportation infrastructure and making, investments in highways that last 70 to 80 years without really taking that into account. So what we have done with our partners at Disability Rights Washington and 350 Washington and others is create a transportation bill of rights that really create a foundation of just the moral foundation of what everybody, regardless of age, regardless of ability, regardless of race or income, should expect from our transportation system. And we're really excited to say that today we're rolling out a calculator that our partners at the Rocky Mountain Institute have created that will allow us to know what are the climate change impacts of a particular project, what are the health impacts of a particular project that's proposed, so that our communities can advocate for themselves. So I'm going to turn off my camera now and introduce Rosalinda Guillen, who is the co-lead of the Front and Centered Community Council, and she is going to give us an introduction to Front and Centered and the Just Transition work that we are doing. And I'm going to turn off my camera. Rosalinda, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Paulo. I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar. I think you're going to learn a lot today. And my name, of course, as you heard, Rosalinda Guillen. I'm the co-lead of the Front and Centered Community Council. I'm also the founder of Community to Community Development, a farm worker POC-led organization based in Bellingham, Washington, with a service center in Skagit County, and we have a statewide reach within the farm worker community. So we're one of the founding members of Front and Centered, and I'm proud to be here today to launch this transportation campaign. I think as farm workers, people would not consider that we would be involved in something like this. But climate change and highway and road expansions, maintenance and building are all very critical to farm worker communities and farm worker families in rural Washington State. Washington State is still an agricultural economy mostly, and farm workers have been declared essential workers in the state of Washington along with on a national level now. So I think that what's really exciting about this campaign for me and our ecofeminist team in Community to Community is the launch of this tool for farm worker families and farm workers in general to be able to have a tool like this to measure the impacts of bad air, but also, is there good air or not, is really important. We have a really high number of asthma in the farm worker community. This comes from cumulative impact of pesticides and other toxics in rural Washington State. So measuring emissions from vehicles in our rural communities and rural towns is really important, because we don't need a whole lot more of bad stuff in the air to continue to make farm workers sick. Additionally, we are looking at this tool as a good step towards participation of farm workers and farm worker families in the decision-making process when it comes to this type of development and construction in our communities. The ability to have a tool and be able to help collect data and to understand within ourselves what is causing the asthma and some of the other health impacts on our communities is really important. So I'd like to thank 350 WA and Disability Rights Washington for being partners in launching this campaign. And of course, to the folks in Colorado, the Rocky Mountain Institute, for creating the tool. Those of us working together, I think, when you look at 350 WA and Disability Rights Washington, a farm worker organization like C2C, Front and Centered, and then the use of technology to help us to participate is really important. It's a nice combination of a holistic approach to what Mother Nature needs to protect her land, her air, and her water. For us, it's critically important that we are stewards of the land, along with our Indigenous brothers and sisters that have stewarded it since time immemorial, that we be able to contribute to that stewardship as we grow food for people's tables across Washington state. So I want to thank our partners for entering into this campaign with us, and know that you can count on us to support that campaign. We want to move forward with a lot of informative presentations today. This is an educational webinar so that you understand why this is so important to us. I think that's about all I have to say. I want to thank the interpreter that's taking the time for those folks that cannot participate sometimes. And I forgot to describe myself. So I am a 70-year-old, 4'11", brown Mexican woman. I wear glasses and I've got my hair pulled back. And sometimes I tend to look a little fierce, but you don't have to be afraid of that, because we're farm worker advocates and we're looking to liberate the farm worker community so that your food system can really be equitable, healthy, taste good, and at the same time know that we are protecting Mother Earth. So enjoy the presentations today, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rosalinda. You always look fierce and welcoming to me. Anna is next.
Hello, everyone. This is Anna Zivarts. I'm a white woman in my 30s. I have thick, chunky red glasses on with thick lenses, and I'm standing really close to the camera because that's how I can see you all on the screen. And I am the director of the Disability Mobility Initiative. We're a program focused on transportation access throughout Washington state for non-drivers. And I want to share with you a video that we made. And I know that it's not ideal to watch videos streamed over Zoom. So we'll also be pasting a link to that on YouTube in the chat that you can watch later. And as well as some resources. We are organizing non-drivers across Washington state because we believe that our transportation needs, the ways we connect to our communities, have been underfunded and overlooked for too long. And instead, we've been expanding our highways, and that's caused a lot of barriers to access for us, and also a drain to the resources that we need to actually build the sidewalks and the robust transit networks that would allow us to be fully involved and fully connected. So we'll paste those links in the chat to more of our stories, more of our resources. But here's just a quick sample of the voices of people from our community who are demanding a different future. Let's see if I get this to play now. Come on. All right.
When I had my brain bleed in California, I moved up here because that's where I have all my friends and family.
Highway rolls along a cracked up sidewalk past us.
And then you have sidewalks like this, which to me is an embarrassment.
Like where I'm standing is on grass, where a sidewalk is supposed to be.
Chris uses uses a white cane to walk along a muddy path to the Vancouver bus stop. Other disabled people navigate the mud and walk in the street.
So when it's rainy, like Washington often is, it gets really muddy and hard to walk, so you almost feel like you're safer walking on the edge of the road.
In Spokane, Alpha uses a white cane to navigate along the edge of a suburban neighborhood street that doesn't have sidewalks.
My worry is somebody's really zipping hell-bent for election and I don't get out of the way in time, you know?
Cody Shane in Tooele pushes a trike along a sidewalk that is missing sections and filled with gravel.
Without transportation, people at this point become isolated. And we will become isolated, we become depressed.
Originally, I moved out to Edmonds because that's what my roommates and I could afford.
Erica crosses the suburban Edmond Street in her power wheelchair.
It means taking an hour and a half, 2 hours to get anywhere that I need to go.
A person in a power wheelchair rolls over a cross street where the ramps are angled, so he has to go out into high-speed traffic. Another person, using a white cane, crosses a multi-lane road without crosswalks while a semi approaches.
You can't get across the street sometimes to get a bus or to get some food or some water because there's all these barriers in between.
Jamin in a manual wheelchair approaches an uneven, crumbling sidewalk in Port Orchard.
My trip to school takes me 2 hours.
Abby from Vancouver, holding a white cane and waiting at a bus stop, and then getting off a bus.
If I end up missing one of buses, it takes me around 3 hours.
Chris waits at the bus stop next to her apartment complex on Bainbridge.
I think buses and ground transportation should be something that is seen as anybody and everybody should use on.
A person in a manual wheelchair waiting at a crosswalk as a Pierce Transit bus drives past. Kat from Robertson waits with her power wheelchair in the middle of the road for the bus. Her partner JR waits in the loose gravel with a service dog as the bus approaches.
I'd have all the sidewalks paved that are anywhere anybody can walk, including especially bus stops.
Clayton rolls down the street with other young wheelchair users in the Friday Harbor 4th of July parade.
I'm looking forward to the day when we have some kind of transportation.
Cars speed past the tip of Zach's white cane as he stands on the edge of a busy rural road in Kingston.
You can make a lane wider for big trucks, or why can't you make a sidewalk for people who are traveling that don't have access to driving?
People like me shouldn't be an afterthought. Like, we are here, there's plenty of us, and we don't just want to stay cooped up in our houses because a curb cut is missing or there's roots growing and throwing off the sidewalk.
Anisha rolls up to a missing curb ramp on her street in West Seattle. Another wheelchair user rolls over a giant crack in the sidewalk caused by a tree root.
And we don't want to be harassed in the street because that's our only option to be safe.
Anisha weaves through the cars blocking the curb ramp as she tries to cross an intersection.
And those are things that are preventable, so we should prevent them.
Produced by the Disability Mobility Initiative.
That's what I got.
Thank you so much, Anna. Sol?
Hello everyone, buon tarde, good afternoon. My name is Sol. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a mid-20s Black femme with curly hair and gold glasses. I am the transportation specialist at Move Redmond. We are the nonprofit advocates of better biking, walking, and transit in Redmond. And our 30 member organizations represent over 100,000 people that bike, walk, and use transit in Redmond. Those folks go to work or school in Redmond and come from everywhere across the region. And 9 out of 10 folks who work in Redmond do not live in Redmond. And many of those folks that do commute in come from throughout the region and rely on a combination of walking, biking, and public transit. We recognize that equitable access to reliable transit systems is a fundamental right, with the potential to deliver numerous health, safety, environmental, and economic benefits. Myself as a public health professional and also someone who uses transit, especially recognize that. And a just transition into transportation means centering the health and well-being of our community members, right? A couple months back, Move Redmond hosted an event to look at accessibility surrounding the light rail station. And we asked the folks who participated and folks who lived in the neighborhood to conduct a walking audit, really centering people's experience, those who live and work in the neighborhood today. The group shared what could be done to sort of create safer streets and better access to transit in the future. One of the projects that folks and residents were unaware of was the new freeway ramp from SR 520. This project would build a freeway off-ramp at the Overlake Village Light Rail Station entrance, which will be one of the busiest pedestrian crossings in the city. This project will add 1,200 cars during the peak hours to the neighborhood's main street, which is the primary way of walking and biking to the station. Congestion around the Overlake area is already miserable. We need to make investments in policies and infrastructure that have a proven track record of keeping our region moving, such as investing in frequent and reliable transit. We want infrastructure that doesn't harm local air quality and supports our climate emission reduction goals, improves public health and traffic safety, and ensures equitable mobility opportunities for everyone commuting in the region. That's why we're really pushing for mitigation strategies, and we're demanding it right now. Move Redmond requests WashDOT to put SR 520 Overlake access ramp project on pause until these accessibility concerns can be truly addressed. Many of these forms of transportation infrastructure have historically caused damage and have been harmful to Black and Brown communities, whether that be the build out of the 520 bridge on Indigenous burial grounds, or the restriction of movement of Black families due to racially restrictive housing covenants. And we can't let this happen to our community members in the Overlake area, which is a majority POC neighborhood. Overlake right now is on the verge of becoming an accessible neighborhood that prioritizes people walking, biking, and taking transit. And the current design of the project, it's unsafe and it counteracts sort of the investments in light rail and affordable housing near the station. Mitigation investment in walking, rolling, biking, and transit infrastructure must be made to the 520 access ramp to serve the Overlake neighborhood better. And these strategies truly need to be taken with a health lens focusing on noise, roadway pollution, accessibility, and pedestrian and bicycle safety. And we're pushing for that now. I think someone dropped the link for our page in the chat. So feel free to sign up for our action alerts and follow along with sort of what we're doing right now. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And we have links to the event that Sol and Move Redmond are hosting around the SR 520 ramp, and I'll share that. They're on our campaign page, and Charlie will put a link to that. Andrew, you're up next.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Ketta, he, him. I'm a middle-aged white guy with glasses and a gray soul patch and permanent bad hair day, I think. 350 Washington is a climate organization that fights for a safe climate for us all. All right. About a century ago, our country began building and expanding highways. We now have only over 8.3 million lane miles of roadway, enabling over 3 trillion miles of vehicle travel. 3 trillion miles. That's a lot of pollution choking our communities, especially communities of color. Transportation is also the leading contributor to climate pollution in the US. Our 8.3 million miles of road lanes is what allow that pollution. Highways are as much a part of the fossil fuel burning infrastructure as the pipelines that bring oil to market. Continuing this climate pollution is reckless. Most of us in the Northwest survived this summer's heat dome. though let's take a moment to remember that over 1,200 people did not. We've also gotten used to supercharged wildfires that bring weeks of smoky air almost every summer. We see Mount Rainier's massive glaciers retreating. Maybe we should draw comfort from the fact that Washington State has a climate pollution reduction target. That should help us change our course. Yes, targets can help, but only when the actions you take aim at the target. And right now, our transportation investments do not. In fact, Washington legislators do not even consult studies on climate impacts of the major transportation projects they consider. You might think they would want to know that a highway expansion project may add X millions of tons of climate pollution to our annual emissions, or that funding Safe Routes to School project might result in a reduction of climate pollution. But this information is not part of the decision-making process. But now, thanks to Rocky Mountain Institute, our legislators can make more enlightened decisions. With the help of RMI's pollution calculator, legislators can consider the climate impacts of highway expansion. So let's all send our legislators this information to make sure they have the data they need to invest our transportation dollars wisely in decarbonizing projects. And I think Ingrid is going to drop into the chat a link to our letter that you can send. Now, some legislators, especially those with road widening projects in their district, may resist this idea. They might tell you that these expansions have already been planned. They've already engineered. They might say this is phase 3 or 4 of a 4-part project, and that the communities are clamoring for congestion relief. But the truth is that those factors are always there. That's the nature of highway expansion. It's continuously needing more. So there'll never be a good time to stop highway expansion. And that is why now is the best time, because the climate demands it. Please also remind your legislators that the best highway story in Seattle is about the highway that was planned but never built. R.H. Thompson Highway was going to run through Montlake, Central District, and Rainier Valley. And we're so glad that they pulled the plug on that one. And finally, you can tell your legislator that history can remember them as one of the people who said enough is already too much. By speaking out, they can be the heroes of the future who announce the end of the relentless and reckless highway expansion era. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And folks will also be able to find a link to that action network that will help you send that letter directly to your legislator on our site as well. So Steve, we're so happy to have you. Steve is here from Smart Growth America, which is a nationwide organization that focuses on sustainability in the built environment. I'll let him tell you about it. And also a thank you for pitching in for Beth, who couldn't be here today. Beth Osborne for Transportation for America. Go ahead, Steve.
Great. Thanks for having me, inviting me, Paolo. It's good to be here with everybody. Transportation for America is a program of Smart Growth America. Beth is our director, and that's who I'm here on her behalf. We're an advocacy organization that envisions a transportation system that safely, affordably, conveniently connects people of all means and all abilities to jobs, services, and opportunities through multiple modes of travel. And I want to just talk about 3 quick things. I think we have a lot of very excited and engaged climate advocates, and I have hopefully just a couple of things to share with you. I want to talk about why our federal transportation program is sort of leading us to all these bad outcomes. I want to talk about why your state DOT in Washington may not necessarily be the enemy. And then I want to give you one last recommendation about about sort of shaping your advocacy in some ways to be effective. So one thing I want to talk about with the federal transportation program that you need to know is that it's largely a block grant. Yes.
Steve, we've got plenty of time, and folks are asking that you slow down a little bit so that the ASL interpreter can catch up, and folks that are looking at the you're going so fast maybe that the closed captioning is not keeping up. So take your time. We got plenty of time.
I'll do my best. I'm a fast talker. So one thing to know is that the federal transportation program is largely a block grant program to the states. Federal gas tax money is more or less handed over to the states, and they have a wide degree of latitude to do pretty much whatever they want with it. That's why we get road widenings. That's why we get a lot of these things. At least once a week, every other week, I spend a lot of my time on the phone with media, communications director historically, and at least once a week, especially as we have debated the infrastructure bill, a reporter is stunned to find out that there's no requirement for states to prioritize repair before they go and build a new asset that they're going to have for 50 years that they have to pay to maintain. To build a new bridge, to widen a road, there's no responsibility that a state has, a requirement to handle repair first. You know, in Washington State, I think 64, 65% of all the roads are in fair or poor condition. And the state is spending about 21% of their $2.7 to $3 billion in transportation capital spending each year on repair. They spend about 35% on building new roads. Washington is actually probably in the sort of the upper third of doing this better. Some states are far worse. I don't think this is a great thing for Washington to celebrate that they're sort of leading a very mediocre trend. So there's no requirement to prioritize repair. That's what makes it very easy to do a lot of these widening projects. The systems that states use that the engineers use tend to prioritize speed instead of safety. Although every state DOT will tell you that safety is their top priority, when you get down to it, when they have to make decisions between slowing down vehicles slightly, slowing down throughput to prioritize safety for people in cars and outside of cars, speed almost always wins out. It's embedded deeply in the program. Another thing I'd want to note is that we talk a lot about, the mistakes of the 60s and the 70s with freeway widenings and running freeways through urban neighborhoods, through Black neighborhoods, through neighborhoods of people of color. We're still doing this. We profiled a project with the induced demand calculator this week in Shreveport, where the state is going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build 3.6 miles of new interstate directly through a Black neighborhood that they say themselves is only going to carry 3,600 vehicles per day. To move 3,600 cars a day, they think it's still worth it to plow through a Black neighborhood. These are not old problems. These are not things that we somehow found our way past. We're still doing a lot of these things. Lastly, the infrastructure deal that you've all heard about is a combination of the 5-year transportation bill, sort of sets funding for 5 years, and a standalone infrastructure bill. We've heard a lot about the climate provisions that are in this bill. And it's good, it's notable to actually be talking about climate at this federal level for the first time. But the small amount of money that it has for climate programs, for electric vehicles, for charging, for all these things will be dwarfed by the hundreds of billions of dollars that are devoted to the same program that is given to states with no requirement to repair, all these things. We are going to use an excavator to continue digging a hole that we are filling with a teaspoon. It is not going to get us there. Second thing I want to talk about very quickly is that your state DOT in Washington is not necessarily the enemy. There are a lot of people at the Washington DOT who want to do the things that you want. I'd say that they are constrained by a couple of things. One is that projects are conceived and earmarked by the legislature in Washington state. So they're not always making plans of their own for what they want to build and where. They follow the direction of the legislature. they also follow the political influence of the governor and the legislature. And that's why doing this, directing your advocacy in this direction is so important. So to change what gets built, you need to find ways to challenge Governor Inslee's climate bona fides with the facts of his transportation spending. I think RMI did a great job of this in Colorado, where they talked about what was going to be built and juxtaposed it with the state's own climate goals, and showed how it's going to be very hard to get there. Give the state DOT political cover to do the things that you want. And the last thing I want to say very quickly is just a recommendation for your advocacy. Always try to expand your coalition. I know we have a lot of people that are passionate about climate and about justice, but find ways to include people who don't agree, who do agree with your desired solutions or outcomes, but maybe not your motivation. Don't make passion for addressing climate change a prerequisite to doing things and adopting policies that would improve climate outcomes. You know, what do I mean by that? A great example. There are millions of people who don't care about climate one bit, certainly not in an animating way, but they want to live in places that are walkable, that are transit connected, that have a lot of options for getting around, where emissions are going to be lower, but they can't find housing they can afford. We don't have enough. So focus on that. Bring those people into your coalition. It doesn't matter, you know, if they care about climate change. There are scores of local elected officials who may not have climate at the top of their list, but they're tired of seeing millions or billions of dollars get blown on congestion solutions that aren't working. Help them be a part of a different vision for transportation, and find ways to expand your coalition so that we can get to the right policies and the right outcomes, regardless of what people care about as you bring them to the table. And with that, I think we'll transition over to Ben, who's going to talk about one way we do this with this great new calculator that we worked on together that we're all very excited about.
Go ahead, Ben. Thanks so much, Steve.
Great. Yeah, my name is Ben Holland. I'm a manager on the urban transformation team at RMI. I'm a 40-year-old white man with brown hair, and I've got some bags under my eyes from what's been a pretty long week. So it's good to connect with everyone here. Some background on RMI. We are a nonprofit based in Colorado, but we now have offices and employees around the country. We're really focused on accelerating a transition to a clean energy economy. And the way we do that is we work on environmental solutions and policies within the building sector, electricity, and in transportation. And I work on our transportation practice. And up until about a couple of years ago, that's really meant that we were focused on vehicle electrification. How do we get more people driving electric cars? And I've really tried over the last couple of years to change that. And in large part from working with groups like Transportation for America, we're broadening the scope of our work to think about and really drive forward policies and practices in transportation equity, mobility access, safe routes to schools, safe routes period, and elevating the importance of sort of non-technology solutions in the climate discussion. The climate discussion with regard to transportation has largely not entirely been focused on electric cars. And for that reason, the subject of the highway expansions and sort of the ills that they create rarely, if ever, comes up in those climate discussions. So big part of what we're trying to do with this calculator is to change that discussion, because, you know, we're actually expected to applaud to some extent expansions, highway expansions based on sort of these false statements that they improve public health, or they improve air quality, and that they improve the environment. And we know that that is not the case. They simply encourage more people to drive. Or, you know, when you see politicians cutting ribbons in front of electric car charging stations, we're expected to believe that they're doing everything they can to improve the environment, improve public health, and tackle climate change. All of this while expanding, basically highway expansions are essentially fossil fuel infrastructure meant to improve the lives of vehicle owners and drivers at the expense of those who cannot choose not to drive. You know, and so that's a big part of, that's the main reason why we created this calculator. We want to shift that conversation in a way that policymakers and advocates alike know that highway expansions are incompatible with any kind of climate strategy. So when you see big, bold claims about reducing emissions by 50% by 2030 or whatever the number is, if that also includes a status quo of expanding highway infrastructure, then that needs to be called out. And I think this calculator will help advocates do that. I hope it will help advocates do that in the coming years, because not just in Washington and in the Seattle area, but we're seeing, as Steve had mentioned, in Shreveport, in Austin, in Austin, Texas, and Denver, Colorado, all over the country, and even in very otherwise progressive states like Washington and Colorado, we're still seeing this as a big problem. So a significant amount of funding going towards expanding highways when there's so much that needs to be done just on basic maintenance and repair and creating safe routes. So it's a very simple calculator that we produced with Transportation for America. Natural Resources Defense Council is also a partner. And all of this was really based on a tool that the University of California at Davis created for the state of California. We expanded that to 50 states. So pretty much any user across the country, and including Puerto Rico, would be able to use this tool to be able to get a sense of how many greenhouse gas emissions are going to be generated through an expansion. So you simply plug in a number of lane miles that will be added from a project, and it'll spit out a number of metrics related to how many more vehicle miles traveled there'll be, or how many more miles we can expect to be traveled on those roads, as well as what is the greenhouse gas emissions associated with those miles. What we hope to do in the future is to start incorporating the public health data as well. It's not available really for this version, but we hope to include air pollution data that would be generated from these expansions. But Paolo, I don't know if it would make sense to pull up the tool, or what would you like me to do here?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, 1 second.
And while Ben does that, I'll add that using the outputs of the calculator, front and centered is looking for ways to convert the additional traffic and the additional fuel used into some indicators of public health, like asthma cases, like the amount of particulate that may cause cardiovascular disease. So Ben, we'd love to share with you the work that we've done so far on that, and to keep working on it together.
That would be amazing. That'd be great. Is this visible?
Yep, we can see it. Looks great.
Okay. So what we're looking at here is a simple web page that, again, this was created by the following partners: NRDC, Transportation for America, National Center for Sustainable Transportation, that's University of California at Davis. And we were lucky enough to get a small amount of funding to produce this calculator. And we received that funding from the Ulupono Initiative in Hawaii, as well as the Hawaii Climate Commission, which is essentially the state of Hawaii. So we'll be doing a similar exercise as we're doing today for those partners in Hawaii. But essentially what this does is there's also a frequently asked questions that's available here, as well as the background methodology. The methodology document, I think, downloads into a PDF and provides all the background information on how the numbers were calculated, where the research comes from. It's based on a robust set of real world observations and research in the academic community that essentially shows that for the most part, on average, every 1% of lane miles on a highway that you increase, every 1% of a highway that's increased in lane miles, sorry, you can expect to see a 1% increase in vehicle miles traveled. So to just kind of walk through how that works, I'll just choose the state of Washington, obviously here. And you have two options: interstate highways, or and the second option is other freeways or expressways. Let's go with interstate highways, and we'll choose and that provides a drop down menu with all the different counties or urbanized areas within the state of Washington. We'll go ahead and choose Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue. And I don't know, Paolo, what do you think is like a reasonable number we could add here? I know we're still kind of putting those numbers together, but I think maybe 20, we could just.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So let's just say that a project in the Seattle area is going to create lane miles by 20 miles. So that could be two additional lanes over a 10-mile stretch is one way to think about it. So you just calculate the numbers, and what this is showing is it would generate annual vehicle miles traveled between 103 to 155 million vehicle miles traveled a year. That would, let's see here. Yep, that's based on the fact that this urbanized area, Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue, currently has 1,422 lane miles of interstate highways, and currently has a vehicle miles traveled per year of 9.2 billion. Adding the 20 miles would again induce 103 to 155 million vehicle miles traveled. And we equate that to basically adding 13,500 passenger cars or light trucks a year, or 7 million gallons of gas. That is just like an equivalency. So you could basically, through the increase of driving, an increase of vehicles on the road, that's sort of the equivalency that we've calculated here. And then 0.5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, a range of 0.5 to 1.5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. And then under a business, I like to focus on the business as usual scenario. If we don't do anything drastic on electric vehicle adoption, it kind of follows the same path. So even more gasoline vehicles on the road, and an increase in vehicle miles traveled, we would see direct emissions of 1 million metric tons of carbon dioxide through 2050. So basically, what we want to show here is that it's incompatible with a climate strategy. Anything else I can provide on this?
I think this is great, Ben. I think what we'll do is we'll ask folks to start asking questions. And for folks that join in later, we're using a screen reader for folks that can't see the screen, or we can't hear rather. And so we want you to send the chat, not your questions, not to everyone, but to Ingrid Elliott, and chat questions directly to her, and Ingrid will help facilitate the questions. Ben, thanks so much. I'm gonna, while people are queuing up their questions, I'm gonna share my screen one more time and just remind folks, hang on just a sec here, that this is the kickoff of a campaign, and we have a bunch of upcoming events. So here we have a link to the 350 Action Network that we put together, where you can write a letter to your legislator and say, hey, please learn how to use this calculator. It's going to make a big difference. And go ahead and do that. Ooh, sorry, I meant to turn on my camera for a second. And next week, Disability Rights Washington is holding a really exciting campaign called Week Without Driving. And I was thinking that, Anna, maybe you could give a sort of a 1-minute overview of what that is. And there's a link here that folks can find out how to get involved and learn more about it.
Thanks, Paulo. This is Anna speaking. Yes, the Week Without Driving kicks off tomorrow. We're asking elected leaders, in particular, transportation professionals and advocates, people who are here in this room, you're all welcome to join us to try to get around for 1 week without driving yourself in a car. And that doesn't mean you can't ride in a car. We know that especially here in Washington, there are many, many places that are only reachable by vehicle for the most part. But if you do need to drive, you have to ask someone else to do that driving for you. And at the end of the week, we're asking folks to reflect on their experience, share with us what they learned. We're also offering to partner people who are participating in the week with non-drivers from our story map, who are the experts in how to do this, how to plan, how to navigate a pretty incomplete and broken system that we hope we can really invest in if we stop investing so much in highway expansion. Thanks again.
Thanks, Anna. This is Paulo again. So you can go here, find out about all of the events that are coming up. You can also find out about the just transition framework and what that means in terms of transportation. We really want you to read our Transportation Bill of Rights that Front and Center created with our members, with the support of Disability Rights Washington and 350. And now I want to see if there are any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask Ingrid if there are any questions.
Hello, everyone. We definitely have questions. I will just share, first of all, that my name is Ingrid Elliott. I'm transportation team lead at 350 Washington, together with Andrew Ketta, who you heard from earlier. I am a white woman in my 50s with a white and beige shirt and my hair all piled up on top of my head. And with that, I will take you to some questions. We have a handful of questions for Ben about details of the calculator. We'll start with that. So let's see. Can the tool calculate the results of taking away highway lanes? Or relatedly, can it calculate the current highway configuration? Let's start with that, and then there are some more follow-up questions on details. Ben?
It cannot calculate taking away highway lanes, but that is a really great idea. I just made note of that. Something to consider.
Yeah, and what about the current highway configuration?
Well, it has maybe not so much the configuration, but it has built into it all the number of lane miles in every county and urbanized area in the country. All of that data came directly from the U.S. Department of Transportation, but not so much around the design of the highway. So, in a perfect world, you'd have like some kind of visual of the highway itself, and maybe you could modify it yourself, take some lanes away or take down the whole highway. But no, that's not built into this. It is in many ways a simple calculator. It's based on, it has as the foundation, all of lane miles across the country, and it runs the calculation on top of that.
Okay, great. And is there a way of measuring additional increments of VMT?
I'm not sure what they mean by that.
Yeah, the follow-up question is it simply measuring what will happen on the new highway, or is there a way of measuring the additional increment of vehicle miles traveled?
It will, I think it's basically we have a confidence interval on it, a range between, given how many lane miles you assume are going to be added, it gives you a range that's based on like an elasticity of 0.8 to 1.2. Originally, it just gave you a straight number. This will produce, 50 million VMT a year. But now we have a range. I think maybe you could, I think that's about all that it can do, frankly.
Okay, all right. This is for either Ben or for Steve. Can you just address why expanding and building new highways doesn't lead to less traffic? That seems to be, of course, against what the general understanding is of highway infrastructure. Often the claim lawmakers make is that we have to expand the highway because we need to alleviate congestion. Why is that not true?
It's a great question because it seems so logical. And I remember when I was growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, driving on an interstate to a school I went to for a year or two every day, sitting in traffic, and that was my immediate impulse. It'd be tough. There's some buildings over there. You might have to knock them down, but if you just added a lane, it would get fixed, right? And it really comes down to the principle of economics of if you give away something for free that people want, more of it, demand will outstrip supply. And that's what happens at peak every single day. You know, Atlanta is a poster child of this. They add a new lane on 85 going out into the northern suburbs. Developers move a little farther out because now they have more land they can open up to development, you know, build new low density stuff. And then new trips emerge, trips that were being taken off peak begin, you know, being taken in the peak hours in the newly available space, and then it fills up. It's a great point, and it's a good one to remember that it's intuitively, it seems like it should work, and that's why they keep doing it. And it just doesn't. It creates new trips almost out of thin air. It's like magic. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that, Ben.
No, I think you covered it really well. I mean, certainly it will reduce congestion temporarily, but that quickly is offset by the increase in driving. And another poster child that we talk about quite a bit is the Katy Freeway in Texas. They spent, I forget how many billions of dollars on that expansion.
Was it $2.9 billion project?
Something like that. And then almost immediately, the congestion levels or the traffic delay time reached its previous levels within like a year or two, I think, and then increasing from there.
Just jumping in here to say that on our site, we've got a little 2-minute animation that kind of is a little cartoon that kind of shows the story that Ben and Steve just told. So please go in there and share that as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to my muted state.
Okay, thanks, Paulo. We have 3 minutes left. I want to give Rosalinda the last question. Can you talk a little bit more about the connections between new highways and fossil fuels and the health and well-being of farm workers and essential workers?
Yes, I mean, I think that this is why front and centered is so important. And because of these partnerships that we're developing with organizations that presented here today, which is bringing a tool to communities like Disability Rights Washington is representing, and also farm workers in rural areas and urban areas across Washington state. Our communities are, you know, so far removed from the decision-making processes that develop these policies in these legislations, such as the Climate Commitment Act. The fact that the holistic approach to continuing to build out the ability for people to continue to use cars is huge when you're looking at the transportation package. So for farm workers like myself and others that are members of Front and Center, this is critical. And our communities are living in areas where there are highways and roads that are adjacent to work areas, like outdoor farm areas. Like I was talking about Highway 20 in Skagit County that shoots across from Mount Vernon, I-5 in Burlington, Washington, all the way to Anacortes. And along that highway are many raspberry, strawberry, and tulip fields along that highway. And so when you combine, again, the impact of cumulative health impacts of the use of pesticides and other toxics in agriculture, even just the least amount of those emissions from cars in the air around our workplaces and areas where we live, the impacts on farm workers' health is huge. And so for us, this is really important because decisions are being made without us. And this webinar is a way for us to call your attention to the fact that this isn't just about getting to your destination for work or for recreation or family gatherings and all of that. You are traveling through people's homes, through people's spaces and air and land where families live and work. And that travel in between is what's causing the danger to our families. I just want to say that farm workers suffer disproportionately from asthma. And we know why. A lot of that is the pesticides and the chemicals. And now we can make with you in our community the holistic connection of emissions and how a climate policy can just make the unhealthy conditions around us even worse. So for us, this is important, and this is why we're here. We are essential workers now, working to produce food for all of you in the orchards in Eastern Washington, the vineyards, the hops fields, all of the roads that go through these areas with farm workers working on the side of the roads affect us. So I just want to finish off by saying we're here and members of Front and Centered because today the lifespan of a farm worker is 49. And all of these are cumulative impacts, including highways and the impact of cars. So it's not about, recreation for us, even though we need it and we want it. But we want to be healthy enough to be able to participate and enjoy it with our families. I want to just thank everybody for listening to us and understanding what a huge respect and recognition it is to have farm workers and Disability Rights Washington be front and centered in this discussion about climate justice and safety and health for all of us as a community. Thank you.
Rosalinda, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And so everybody, this is Paulo. I really appreciate every single one of you who presented today and every single one of you who came. And I want to just give a last plug so Wednesday, next Wednesday at 10 a.m. we've scheduled a calculator training, and you can sign up for that on our site. And we can schedule many more of those. And we really, really look forward to walking this road with you all so that we can make a just transition in transportation. Thanks, everybody.